For a long time, many people thought the Shang Dynasty might be only a legend, but buried bones changed that forever. Those bones were not found in a royal library or a temple wall. They were sold in Chinese medicine shops as dragon bones, ground into powder, and used like old remedies. Then, in 1899, scholar Wang Yurong noticed strange marks on them and realized the marks looked like very ancient writing. That moment helped prove the Shang were real, and not just names copied in later books. The Shang Dynasty is usually dated from about 1600 BCE to 1046 BCE, though some older traditions place the start even earlier. Modern archaeology focuses especially on the last Shang capital, which stood at Anyang in Henan province. That site is called Yingshu, which means the ruins of Yin, and it gave China its earliest confirmed dynasty. So this story is really about three things: writing, power, and sacrifice. The writing came on oracle bones, and these are some of the most unusual records anywhere in the ancient world. Oracle bones were usually ox shoulder blades or turtle shells used in divination during the late Shang period, roughly 1250 to 1050 BCE. A diviner carved a question into the bone, heated it with a hot bronze rod, and then read the cracks like a message. The questions were very practical. They asked about harvests, weather, childbirth, war, the king's health, and whether angry ancestors were causing trouble. Sometimes the answer, or the later result, was also written back onto the bone. That means these bones were not just ritual objects. They were records of daily royal decision-making. About 13,000 oracle bones, with more than 130,000 inscriptions survive, spread across China and about 14 other countries. The script uses around 5,000 distinct characters, and scholars have confidently deciphered roughly 1,200 of them. Even more amazing, many common ideas in that script sit near the root of later Chinese writing. So when people say the Shang feel forgotten, the strange part is that the Shang actually left many written records. The problem was that the records were buried, scattered, and misunderstood until modern archaeology pulled them back into history. That recovery led researchers to Yingshu, the late Shang capital near modern Anyang. Systematic excavations there began in the early 20th century and expanded strongly between 1928 and 1937. Teams led by Li Ji, often called the father of Chinese archaeology, recovered about 20,000 oracle bone fragments. One famous pit found in 1936, called YH-107, held more than 17,000 inscribed pieces by itself. So Yingshu was not a tiny camp or a village with one shrine. It was a major Bronze Age city with palace areas, workshops, roads, walls, and ritual spaces spread across a planned landscape. Archaeologists found rammed earth palace foundations, jade workshops, pottery areas, and bronze production zones. That tells us Shang kings ruled through ceremony, war, and advanced craft production all at once. Bronze mattered, especially because Shang ritual vessels were some of the finest metal objects of the ancient world. They were cast with piece mold technology and decorated with powerful mask designs called taodi. These vessels were used to offer millet wine to ancestors and to display status, lineage, and royal control. In other words, bronze was not just metal. It was religion, politics, family memory, and public power poured into one object. The best-known Shang king in surviving records is Wu Ding, because about 55% of oracle bones come from his reign. Radiocarbon dates place his rule roughly between 1250 and 1192 BCE, with a dated sample range around 1254 to 197 BCE. The bones preserve his worries about weather, crops, armies, sickness, and even the loyalty of his wives. That makes Wu Ding one of the best documented individuals from the whole ancient world before classical Greece and Rome. He also had many wives, with some sources placing the number as high as 64 official consorts. Most are forgotten by name, but one woman stands out so strongly that she changed the image of Shang women forever. Her name was Fu Hao. Oracle bones show that Fu Hao was not only a royal wife. She led military campaigns, raised armies, performed sacrifices, and acted as a high priestess for the king. That makes her the earliest clearly documented woman general in Chinese history. In 1976, archaeologist Zheng Jingxiang and her team found Fu Hao's tomb near the palace area at Yingshu. It was the only royal Shang tomb ever discovered unlooted, which made it one of the greatest finds in Chinese archaeology. The tomb was not huge, but the objects inside were astonishing. Researchers found 755 jade objects, 468 bronze objects, 564 bone objects, 63 stone pieces, 11 pottery items, 5 ivory items, and 6 900 cowrie shells. Those cowrie shells function like money in the Shang world, so the tomb also reveals wealth and exchange, not only ritual. Some jades were even older than the Shang, from cultures like Longshan, Liangzhu, Hongshan, and Shijiahe. That suggests elite Shang people were already collecting ancient objects, something like antique collecting thousands of years ago. But Fu Hao's tomb also shows the darkest side of Shang religion. 16 human skeletons were placed along the edges of the burial pit, and 6 sacrificed dogs lay below the main coffin area. This was not a shocking exception. Large sacrificial deposits are a major feature of Yingshu, especially in the royal cemetery east of the palace zone. Archaeologists have found more than 2,500 sacrificial pits there, along with at least 13 large royal tombs. Many pits held human bodies together with animals, bronzes, or chariot remains. Some chariot burials included the horses, the vehicle, and the driver all killed and buried together. Outside the largest tombs, many smaller pits held single victims or small groups, often captives and slaves from other regions. Oracle bones even record questions about whether a sacrifice would please the ancestors. That means human sacrifice was not hidden at the edge of Shang life. It sat close to the center of how kings spoke with the dead and justified rule. Scientists have tested some of the victims' bones, and isotope studies suggest many were foreigners captured from distant places. Some of them were likely held alive for a time before they were killed. Animal sacrifice was also common. Pigs, dogs, and cattle had long histories in ritual, and the Shang added horses and sheep to the list of accepted offerings. Tortoise shells used for divination often came from tribute, because tortoises were not native to the Anyang region. That detail matters because it shows the Shang ruled a wider political network, not just one city and its nearby farms. Dependent polities sent valuable animals and materials into the Shang ritual system. So Yingshu was the center of a larger Bronze Age world tied together by force, tribute, and ancestor worship. The Shang eventually fell under their last ruler, Dijin, also called King Zhou of Shang. Later tradition painted him as cruel, wasteful, drunk, and controlled by his consort Daji. Stories say he built pleasure palaces, tortured people, and lost the moral right to rule. But we must be careful here because the people who replaced the Shang wrote much of that story. The Zhou dynasty conquered the Shang, and then explained the victory using the mandate of heaven. That idea said rulers keep power only while they remain morally fit, so a fallen dynasty must have become corrupt. The decisive battle was Muye, usually dated to 1046 BCE. There, the Zhou alliance defeated the Shang, and tradition says many Shang troops turned against their own king. Di Xin retreated to his palace, set it on fire, and died in the flames. The Zhou then built the longest ruling dynasty in Chinese history, lasting about 789 years. So why do people still call the Shang forgotten? They are forgotten partly because their records stayed buried, partly because later conquerors rewrote the story, and partly because few people outside China learned this early chapter well. Yet once the oracle bones were deciphered, the Shang stopped being a rumor. They became the earliest Chinese dynasty that archaeology could firmly verify through writing, cities, tombs, bronzes, and bones. And the world they reveal is unforgettable. Kings asking cracked bones about war, a woman general buried with treasure, and a state powerful enough to make ritual and violence walk together. If you want the next chapter, watch the video on how the Zhou used the mandate of heaven to justify replacing the Shang and reshaping Chinese history.